Hey there, and welcome back to the Maui Hexadome. We are going on our brief lockdown here on Maui. So instead of our usual battle arena game, we're doing a quick review of Prime Time. Now that we've had a couple of battles under our belts, we're going to be talking about how the bigger changes to the game really affect the gameplay. Check our usual game streams and our archives to see some of these primetime battles. But the four things we're really going to focus on here, no, not five things, four things we're going to focus on here include the objective cards, the stationary special spaces, the roving moving projectiles, and the fact that we can have up to 4 players now. These are the biggest differences that prime time brings to the table. And some of these have bigger effects than others. So we're going to look at our totally subjective review of what has happened to us so far. Now, being able to have all 4 players at once was a great deal of fun. But that also means each player is restricted to a two character team, and that really threw us for a loop a bit with our team making, because you're really thinking about it as very, very different game style. A lot of the people you normally play together may not work together if it's only those guys. So that was a big change, getting more people involved, but having smaller teams at the same time. When we played one-on-one, we still went for the 4-player, 4 Aristo team, just for the balance there, but the 2-player matches were very interesting. Those of you who aren't playing in large groups, it may not come into play. It's not necessary. But those of you who have a larger group that like to play together, this allows more people to play together at the same time. It did seem to slow down the game a little because it actually went all 5 rounds whenever we were doing, or went for a longer term whenever we were doing multiplayer teams. But that was a change that was affecting the whole game style, but didn't really affect the gameplay as much because it's still every man for himself in the way we were playing. We're looking forward to trying the 2-man, 2-player team games, 4-player, 2 players on a team type of thing. Another thing that it brought into game were called these moving projectiles. Now, they are universally bad. When they're next to somebody, they flip and have their effect, and they can really change things. Since they happen at the end of the round, they can kill people off or move people around that weren't expecting to be there. It can change the final scoring. Even in mid-game, they change how people want to move because you don't want to stop next to one because then they'll go off in your face. You could risk taking it anyway, but since you don't know what they are ahead of time, it is a big risk factor. The fact that there is one for each player means on a 4-player game, they have a much more likely chance of coming into play. Otherwise, they tend to just affect board control. And speaking of board control, the special spaces also have a lot of that. Now, as player, you're going to know a couple of them by default. And some of these are good, some of these are bad. Some of them will move you around to different hexes, that type of thing. If there is displacement on the board, then they become much more of a factor because you can push people onto them. Otherwise, they're just factors in on how you move. Because when you step on them, they trigger. They then stay on the board. So if you know where they are, you may be able to take advantage of them later on in the game. But they're most effective when you have displaces on them. The thing that really affected the game the most for us here in the Maui Hexadome were these objective cards. Because they came out during the game, they can't have more than 2 of the same color, but they were what threw the game into long term more than expected. Things like the underdog, meaning somebody who had 8 at the end of the round, suddenly didn't have 8 at the end of the round. Or having a lot of states as victory points, and then somebody having the chemical brother, Bachman, on play. He was one of the ones who could really take advantage. So the different objectives made a huge impact, not only on where you're playing on the board, but how the characters you chose are going to be effective in the game. Especially for things like Bachman. Since there's no longer a bench, You can't keep him out of the game like you could previously. Killing him off did not remove his turn for that round. So the objectives changed the game radically for us. A game that usually is finalized in round 3 or so went all the way to round 5. The final score usually ends when someone has 8. Well, in our 4-player game, the final score was 10 to 9 to 9 to 9. Simply because the final rounds, everybody was up except for Primus around 6 or 7 points. And then these were pushing people over that 8. And then Primus managed to get a couple of these that turned it around in one of the biggest turnarounds we've ever seen, and came from way behind to compete the game. Check out that one, because even though it was a really long game, it showed a lot of how these different objective changes can totally change the strategy of the board halfway through a round. You don't even want to stack your characters one way or the other, because if you stack yourself early, then when the objectives change, you're not going to have an opportunity to take any of those objectives. Or if you stack yourself too late, any objectives you might have been able to take are going to get sniped up by other players early. So the objective cards themselves seem to give us the biggest change of gameplay for the primetime session. This is just a quick, totally subjective overview of what we found using the new primetime rules. We're hopefully going to get the other players here in Maui Hexadome to give their perspectives. Likewise, we're going to have other videos where we really go into the details of the differences and the uses of these different objectives, and what, these are all the same, of course, thanks guys, but how you can use them during the gameplay and how they can affect what characters you choose. Let us know if you have any questions. Let us know if there's any game setups you'd like us to try online. We do these live every Saturday, 2 p.m. Hawaiian time. I'll let you figure out whatever local time that is. But if you missed the live game, they're all archived on youtube.com/shamelessmayhem. But we've been enjoying Primetime very much. These new additions to the rules really do shake the game up. So if you're used to playing certain ways, if your local meta has become a little stagnant, Primetime will definitely turn it on its head, and that's in a very good way. It opens up all kinds of wacky new strategies. It allows all kinds of turnarounds halfway through the game. So we do recommend giving it a try. Watch our games if you want to see how it happens in play before you commit yourself. But if you've been enjoying Aristeia, we think Primetime really gives you a lot of new options to play. It's been a great 2 thumbs up. Now, that being said, there are still a few hiccups and things happening. For example, there have been a lot of rules questions that come up, whether it's because of translation or because of combinations showing up here that we've might not have been anticipated. We're very active in the forums and in our comments. So as we figure out and nail down specific rules, hopefully that'll make some of the games go a little more smoothly, where we're depending on our normal good sportsmanship to try to work out quickly both what they meant and how it applies to the game in question. But other than a few rules vagaries, there have not been any real issues, negative issues with our games. So we hope to see you. We'll be doing a full battle next week at the usual time. This week, we're just doing our prime time, totally subjective review. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you next time at the Maui Hexadome.